in the Realms of Mediumship by Chico Francisco Candido Xavier and inspired by the Spirit Andre Luis. Chapter 27, Mediumship Gone Astray. Nighttime had fallen completely as we entered a small room where a group of people were praying. Several spirits were mingling there, but they were in terrible shape. They seemed less evolved than the men and women taking part in the meeting. Only Brother Cassio, an amiable and friendly guardian to whom the assistant introduced us, displayed a high moral standing. His spiritual isolation was immediately obvious because neither the discarnates nor the incarnates were aware of his presence or received his thoughts. At our instructor's inquiries, he replied somewhat disheartened. So far, there has been no progress, in spite of the repeated appeals for renewal. We have provided Quintino with the best resources at our disposal: books, other printed materials, conversations from respectable sources, but all in vain. Our stubborn friend is not yet taking stock of the huge responsibility he's assuming in leading a group like this. Alice tried to comfort him with a silent gesture of understanding and invited us to observe. The room was full of dense, disagreeable fluids. Spirits from our plane were communicating through two mediums. According to my first impressions, these spirits had become veritable servants of the group, possibly compensated for less than edifying services. Various servile and meddlesome spirits in the same conditions crowded around them. Psychophony was the main phenomenon in the gathering. The mediums were out of their bodies, but remained in the environment, feeding on the emanations peculiar to them. Raimundo, one of the communicating spirits under the complacent eye of the place's director, was conversing with a woman whose frivolous talk inspired pity. "Raimundo," she was saying, "I need the money that has been piling up for months now at the Institute, of which I'm a harmed creditor. Can you tell me about the delay?" "Be patient, dear sister," recommended the spirit. "We're working on it for you." The conversation continued. "The solution is urgent. You need to help me more effectively. Try to go to the office of that grumpy director and get the papers moving. Do you want the address of the people that we need to influence?" No. I know them and where they live." "I can tell that you're distracted, Raimundo. You're not interested in my case with the necessary diligence." "That's not it. It's just that I've done all that I can." And while the woman lowered her voice to a whisper, a middle-aged gentleman addressed Teotonio, the other communicating spirit, complaining indiscreetly. "Teotonio, how long do I still have to wait?" Appearing to be dumbfounded by the question, the spirit meekly remained silent while the gentleman pressed the matter. "I've been waiting for 4 months now for a favorable decision regarding the job I was promised, but nothing so far. Couldn't you take care of it?" "What do you want me to do?" "I know that the company's manager isn't favorable. Help me by getting him interested in the good resolution of my case." In the meantime, Raimundo's attention was diverted by another woman who was asking him, "My friend, I'm counting on your invaluable assistance. I'm a mother. I can't see my daughter accepting the marriage proposal of such a despicable man. It's an alarming situation at home. My husband can't stand him, and my rebellious daughter has been a torment. Couldn't you get that vulture out of our lives?" Raimundo answered subserviently, while Quintino immediately requested everyone to pray together for the discarnates to get the strength to live up to the group's trust and fulfill the tasks asked of them. The conversations and understandings continued between the communicating spirits and the place's clients, but I didn't pay them any further attention due to their shady aspect. In heartrending circumstances, I had seen obsessors and spirits hardened in evil involved in tremendous conflicts, but nowhere had I felt the compassion I was feeling there, as I saw healthy and lucid individuals viewing the communication with the spirit world as a system for criminal exploitation based on the conduct of least effort. Would the men and women gathered there with such outlandish intentions have the courage to ask incarnate fellow beings for the kinds of services they were demanding from the spirits? Weren't they abusing prayer and mediumship to escape from their personal problems? Didn't they know enough to mobilize their brain, tongue, eyes, ears, hands, and feet in the ennobling learning experience? What were they doing with their faith? Would it be right for a worker to leave to the others the hoe that was his or her duty to hold and put into action in the fields of the world? Alice detected my bitter reflections and kindly hastened to comfort me. Any current study of mediumship, even one as brief as ours, would not be complete if we failed to examine the field of mediumship gone astray, where lazy, incarnate, and discarnate spirits live in an environment of mutual vampirization. As a matter of fact, they are a natural product of the defective ignorance in all types of humankind's places of worship. They abuse prayer as much as they despise the possibilities and opportunities of worthwhile work, looking for ephemeral advantages to accommodate themselves to indolence, in which they crystallize their childish whims. But will they go on like this forever? I asked. Andre, your question misses the mark. You have enough experience to know that pain is the great administrator of divine justice. Our lives are our great battle of evolution. Those who flee the sacrificial work of the front lines will find pain in the rear guard. The spirit may fall into idleness, wrongly mobilizing its will, but the day of torment will finally arrive, compelling it to move and act to better understand the imperatives of progress. It's futile to flee eternity, because time, work's benefactor, is also inertia's executioner. Ilario, who had been reflecting in silence nearby, asked worriedly, "Why do our incarnate brothers and sisters get involved in such practices of least effort? There are so many lessons for spiritual improvement, so many appeals to dignify mediumship in the doctrinal guidelines of Spiritism. Why this lack of equilibrium?" Alice thought for a few moments and replied, "Ilario, you have to remember that this is not in keeping with Spiritist teachings. We are witnessing mediumistic phenomena manipulated by idle minds inclined to debased exploitation wherever they are, and for that reason, deserving of our pity. We are fully aware of the fact that mediumistic phenomena are peculiar to all sanctuaries and all individuals. As for our friends' preference for living around discarnates still strongly bound to the sensorial field of physical life, incapable of a broader vision of the realities of the spirit, well, that is understandable. It's always easier for ordinary individuals to work with subordinates or equals, since working alongside the more evolved requires goodwill, discipline, right conduct, and a firm desire to improve. We know that death is no miracle worker. Each person awakens beyond the grave in the spiritual position that he or she has sought out. Ordinary individuals feel more at ease with spirits that flatter their passions and stimulate their appetites. When we find ourselves around more evolved fellow beings, we feel compelled to educate ourselves, for they have already learned to sublimate their personal impulses, dedicating themselves to the incessant cultivation of the good. But isn't this an abuse of the incarnate individual? Isn't it a crime to prey on less evolved discarnates? Asked Ilario. No question about it. Will such a crime go unpunished? Alice displayed a slight expression of good humor and responded, "Don't get too worried about it. When errors originate from well-intentioned ignorance, the law provides the resources needed for the just enlightenment in space and time, since any genuine charity, in any circumstance, is always praiseworthy. On the other hand, if the abuse is deliberate, punishment is unavoidable." He glanced over at the group's director and the mediums through whom the spirits were communicating, and added, "Teotonio and Raimundo, as well as other discarnates like them around here, are actually more vampirized than those vampirizing. Fascinated by Quintino's requests, as well as those of the mediums who support their unfortunate work, they follow in their steps like devoted students looking up to their mentors. In the event that they do not readjust to the good, then as soon as the director of the group and the mediums who copy his attitude discarnate, they will be assailed by the spirits they have enslaved asking for their guidance and help. Most probably, later on, in the future to come, when victimizers and victims are reunited in the same family on earth as parents and children to settle accounts and readjust their attitudes, they will balance out the debts they had gotten themselves enmeshed in earlier. Due to our silent wonder, the assistant concluded, each worthy deed receives its due payment, and each unworthy venture has its corresponding costs. Alice invited us to leave. The environment did not encourage further study, and we had already assimilated the lesson to be learned.